Hello, thank you for joining me. I am a raging papist, and I am here with a regular now on this channel. This is GameDiviner. Today we're going to be talking about a non-Gamergate related issue. This is actually going to be um, strictly theologically based, strictly about his story of conversion, going from atheism to Catholicism. One of the things I want to have on my channel are stories of faith, and because I'm very curious to see how does God move in their life, and oh, whoops, that's what I get for having the chat on in the background. But I'm curious to see the adventures that people have, and to see the way the Holy Spirit moves in their life. And there may be issues related to Gamergate or social justice or things of that nature, but this is a non-Gamergate stream. On my channel, I'm also going to have another like reactionary politics and strictly religion. So if that entices you, stick around, subscribe. But for now, I'll go ahead and kick it over to GameDiviner and just ask you, sir, you want to talk about your channel or?
Well, I do a little bit of just on my channel, a little bit on game design, a lot of stuff on Gamergate and gaming culture. It seemed like there was a number of people who were interested in this story, and I'm kind of honored, I guess, that people are curious, but at the same time a little bit intimidated because it is quite a personal story.
Sure.
And for those who hear it, maybe one day, maybe one of my kids might hear it. It is quite something, and I hope that I can spare them a lot of pain that I went through.
Mm-hmm.
So I really appreciate people who have been supportive and really are just in a way kind of curious as well. So I want to tell them, thank you so much, and well, here goes nothing, right?
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and get it started. I think the first question that a lot of people are curious about is what sort of in your journey of faith, what sort of led you, because you were born at least a Christian, correct?
Yes, I was actually born Catholic. Actually, my parents raised me. However, they were also very progressive. Actually, they were very open to a lot of things. When I was a child, actually, when I grew up, especially here in the United States, I grew up in an area where there were a lot of diplomats. So there were a lot of people from different areas of the world, be it from like India, and I had a lot of friends who were actually Muslim when I was growing up, and that's something that always influenced me too, was that there were a number of different opinions and faiths always around me.
Yeah.
And my parents themselves, they weren't really very strict in terms of like religion at all. You can almost argue that they were quite what's the word? Like very liberal, especially when it came to things, especially about sexuality and stuff. And they tended to be very open about it. My parents really didn't mind, pornography or anything like that, which was actually kind of shocking to if you're, a lot of Catholics I know, they're like, oh my gosh, there's pornography. And my dad's like, well, who cares? If you want to, you're a teenager, if you want to read it, just ask. And I'm like, okay, this is way before the age of the internet. So yeah. My dad didn't care. So it came down to like, it was very open and questioned the world a lot. So it really was, and it wasn't really like imposed. Religion really wasn't imposed on me. In fact, one of my clearest memories in terms of like Catholic religious upbringing was that, there would be like 1 hour a week where you go to catechism class or, going to confirmation or something like that. And I distinctly remember one girl saying that she believed in reincarnation. And the teacher there really didn't know how to answer the question, or at least how to address that belief system. So when I left there, I got the impression that, maybe there are other answers out there and other questions. And when I was a teenager, I started getting into anime around like 12, 13, around the time I was an adolescent. And back then,
best time to get involved.
Yeah, well, but back then there was like nothing there. There was like a small like 1 or 2 like shelves in the local video rental store. So I'd watch a lot of anime, and anime has a lot of interesting and different questions, but not only that, but fascination with the Japanese culture.
Right.
So I also was fascinated with things like Zen Buddhism and lots of other ideas. So when it came down to my religious upbringing, it really was very light, very limited, and not really And really, I was more just intellectual, just asked a lot of different questions, and maybe there were more different possibilities out there. And that was the basic background I was from. It wasn't really like, there is a God. There, if there is, well, what's the system of afterlife? In fact, I would daydream systems of like how the different religions would work, and probably the best belief system I could come up with was something like the movie What Dreams May Come.
Okay.
Have you ever seen that with Robin Williams?
I have. It's a it's a trippy movie, man.
It is, but that actually was what I believed in as a kid. I made it up in my mind, like, how can all these different religions around each other reconcile themselves and yet still have some sort of answer?
Yeah.
Because they can't all be right and they can't all be wrong. So what's a way to reconcile that? And that's the way my mind worked.
Yeah.
But I really didn't start becoming like an atheist, or anything like that, until I got to college. And that's really where it started, like not just simply curious about religion and philosophy, but really to the point where I was like, there not only is there no God, but that if there was a God, he wouldn't be worthy of worship. That's the thing. It isn't just simply like there is no God, but even if I was proven wrong, I still wouldn't worship him.
Interesting.
There's quite a bit of a little story behind that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for a lot of people with their faith, college and they're leaving the nest, as it were, is really the place where a lot of things are initially challenged. So, if you'd like to talk about that, and go ahead.
Sure. Well, when I got to college, the first group I was really gravitating towards, and I ended up hanging around with the most, were the people who love to play, Dungeons and Dragons, and love role-playing games, and loved anime. People like myself. I grew up as a geek, and I looked at pictures of myself back in high school, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I look like such a nerd.
I'm in the same boat, especially for me. In 5 years of college, that's all I did every weekend. So.
Yeah. So those are the people I gravitated towards. Those people, and like, oh yeah, they love to play Dungeons and Dragons, and they were really great people. They were very open and loving and supportive of one another, but they also tend to be the outcast. Like anyone who's a geek or a nerd knows that feeling. They tend to be the people who dressed weird, or did weird things, or look kind of odd, especially if they tended to dress in darker colors and maybe be a little bit more goth. And those are the people I ended up hanging around with a lot, and I loved them. I loved them dearly. But the thing that I found really interesting was that on campus, the people who would harass them the most would actually be the Campus Crusade for Christ.
Really?
Yeah, that's the thing. The Campus Crusade for Christ is largely evangelical, non-denominational type stuff. And especially around where I went to college, it tended to be like more in the Bible Belt. It actually had what are those people? They hand out little Bibles to you in the middle of school campuses.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And not only that, but they we had people preaching about it and stuff like that. And often they would get in the faces of these people who tended to be either former Christian, non-Christian, agnostic, ex-Catholics, who just simply didn't believe. And at the end of most of those conversations, they're basically saying, you reject Jesus, you're going to hell.
Yeah.
I think that really was the turning point for me, was trying to understand how these people could do that. These are just normal people. In fact, some of these people left Christianity because they hated hypocrisy. And you hate hypocrisy, and so God is going to condemn you to hell because his followers are acting like this. And so I started actually wanting to research how they started thinking this, why they started thinking this, why they believe. Yes, okay. You want a cookie? Yeah. I'm a bad parent. I'm letting my daughter have a cookie.
It's so late at night too. She's gonna be up for quite a while.
She always is anyway. So, well, either that or you guys can have her cry. No, but anyway, yeah. So, it would just for me, from the perspective of how hurtful it was that you're being told you're going to hell simply because you don't agree with someone's religion.
Right.
I took it upon myself to start learning the system of belief of what, evangelical Christianity believe. I actually didn't know there was a difference. I just thought it was just Christianity in general, because the Campus Crusade worked together as a non-denominational group. And I wasn't familiar with the differences.
Yeah.
Either way,
I should have hit that Newman Center.
Basically. And so I'd go to these groups and I'd listen to them tell their stories about, like they go through the whole point of like, from their perspective, that God, that humanity is evil and bound for hell.
Yeah.
And that it is through God's mercy that we're saved. And if you accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, you're saved. And they made that a very simple, very, black and white, tract, something you can give to somebody and they believe. And I'm just like, I looked at it and I'm like, okay, well, let me see if I can understand this correctly. Like, what if you are some Native American who lives in the middle of like North American continent, never seen a Christian in like, your whole life, and you die? Where are you going?
Right.
In the the Campus Crusade people I talked to basically said, no, they're going to hell.
Right.
And I'm like, they've never had even a chance. They're going to hell. And they said, yes, they're going to hell. And I'm like, oh my, I'm like, how can you say this is a loving God?
Right.
And there was other things too, like the idea that a pastor could like live his whole life believing in Jesus, getting drunk seeing his wife cheating on him, gets mad at his wife, kills his wife, goes in a drunken rampage, drives off drunk and collides his car into like a bus. And well, is he going to heaven? Well, did he believe in Jesus? Yes, he believed in Jesus, so he's going to heaven.
I believe the quote is he can raise up his bloody hands to God and say, "Thank God I'm a Christian."
Basically, yes. And I'm like, that's what you believe. And yeah, I get the answer in the affirmative. So I looked at this like, this is not only is this like, this is sick and insane, but it's like that's the way I reacted. This is sick and insane. If this is really what people believe, and this is why they're harassing my friends, then I thought of it as my moral and ethical duty to destroy it. I mean, seriously, like I think any person of any good nature, you love people. If this is what people really believe, and they're out there hurting people, you have to stop it. So, I mean, just from my point of view, like the way I would stop it is simply learn what they believe and tear it up from the inside. Like, I mean, that's my strategy. My strategy was, okay, if I can learn the Bible better than them, I can tear them apart.
Right.
And a lot of atheists actually do that, and they're really good at it. And I think, and I highly respect them for it, because it is a good way. I mean, a good way of philosophizing is not just simply attacking it from the outside,
right,
but understanding it from the inside and showing its internal inconsistencies.
Right.
And that's where I think a lot of atheists are very effective nowadays, is because on the internet, they say, well, the internet's where religions go to die.
Right. That's what Thunderfoot says.
Because they do that. They just show, here's what the Bible says. Do you believe this? And a lot of people who are trained up in this mindset will have to acknowledge that these things are really horrible. If this is really God, then do you believe that this is really who God is?
Yeah.
So my conclusion in the end was, if this is really God, he's not only, I mean, first of all, if I did or didn't believe he existed, if he did exist and I were to meet him, then it would be my moral obligation, even in the afterlife, to reject him.
Mm.
Because, this is insane. If this is really what it is, this is insane.
Yeah.
You create people only to have them be destroyed in hell simply because they never heard your word.
I did it, Dad.
Yes, Jane.
I did it.
You did it?
Yes.
Would you like another cookie?
Yes.
Okay.
Go on, cookie. I'm
Sorry.
thirsty.
Okay.
I'm glad she's here. She removes the intensity of our discussion.
Indeed. A little bit of brevity is good.
No, I'm thirsty.
Oh, you're thirsty?
Yes.
Okay. Let me get you some water.
Yes.
Okay.
Come on.
So, I mean, I hope that makes sense. At least that's the logic of it. And me being a very, I think people can see that I'm a very passionate person, especially about people.
Yeah.
That my natural tendency is to be defensive and of like what I would view as something very hostile and very hateful and divisive that I would actually go after it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I learned a ton of things to tear up people in terms of like what they believe in the Bible,
Yeah.
and go after them, because this is just, what they were doing was cruel.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, I was also learning a lot more religions that I really didn't know existed. A lot of my friends that were into role-playing games were very much like, not only were they just ex-Christian, but a lot of them were like Wiccan or neo-pagan. And in fact, I learned how to do divination. I learned how to do tarot card reading and rune reading, and I never really got into bone reading, but I had friends who actually knew how to do that.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of interesting and different things. I mean, even just from the perspective of like a skeptic, even if you don't believe in some, supernatural things, ESP and people's natural abilities to read others and intuition, there's something to that too.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you don't believe like there might be some like supernatural elements to it, people's natural abilities to read others and to maybe even read, possibly even read the future is interesting. So that's what I found very fascinating myself. And I learned at least how to do tarot card divination.
Interesting. So the immediate question I have is, do you think that stuff is real?
That's that one I actually had to answer. Like, I mean, later on, like as a Catholic, I mean, I'd have to answer the question, like, is something like real? Well, if it isn't, it's a powerful, very powerful placebo. This is actually a reason why I stopped even before I became a Christian. It's a good discussion. I used to do tarot card readings, right?
Okay.
I had a friend of mine who asked me about a possible future that he was dealing with. I forgot what it was at the time, but I read his tarot cards, and I read there on the cards that he would go through tremendous pain. But the pain of it would transform him if he were to go through it, and he would actually grow from it.
Okay.
Even then, even before I even said, okay, this is good or bad, I realized that this is something beyond the realm of human responsibility.
Yeah.
Because I looked at it and I said, who am I? Because I had the choice. I had the choice as the reader to tell him the truth or to tell him a lie to what's going to happen ahead of him. I could lie and prevent him from a lot of pain, which I wanted to do. Because I saw it in the cards, it'd be really tremendous pain. Or I could simply tell him the truth.
Okay.
Either way, it's something that me as a human being should not be responsible for.
Right.
Can you imagine being responsible for someone's fate if you knew what it really was? That's the point where I started walking away from it, because I realized this is beyond me.
Yeah.
Either way, like even if it was just simply my own intuition, my own ability, I realized it's something I shouldn't touch. It's not responsible for me to do that. And even then, like if you knew you could save someone a lot of pain, would you do it, and would you stop them, even if it meant this is something they need to do to grow? That's something. I mean, heck, as a parent, can you imagine that? I mean, like as a parent,
that is a heavy burden.
Yeah, it's a heavy burden to be, and it's something that I just don't want to open.
Right.
And at that point, I was like, whether or not this is real, it's a powerful placebo, because I had friends who were even skeptical atheists, or I would do readings for them, and because they trusted my intuition. Let's just say it's a placebo, right?
Okay.
I tell you, you're going to meet someone out there who's, a beautiful lady with dark hair. Even if you don't believe me, or at least you're a little skeptical, there's something in the back of your mind that's going to be like, that's going to be looking for it.
Right. To try and test it, yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna affect you. And that's the thing. That's how it works. Even if it isn't real, there's a placebo effect.
Yeah.
And that messes with people. Like the one thing I remember, I was studying like a little bit of voodoo with these people and listening to stories of like, well, even if you don't believe in voodoo, if you open your front door and there's a dead chicken that's splayed out in the middle of a circle, that's gonna freak you out no matter what.
That sounds roughly satanic, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like even if it didn't have any power,
right.
that's still emotionally will screw you up.
Right.
So I mean, either way, like. Whether it's real or not, it's something I realize I shouldn't touch. Even people who would do magic knew that they knew that whatever they cast as a spell, their belief is that it'll come back to you threefold.
Yeah.
So if you do negative things, it'll affect you 3 times as badly. So either way, it's something that a power that even they knew it wouldn't be healthy for you.
Right.
So either way, at that point, it's like, whether it's real or not, it's something that I, as a human being, I can't take on that responsibility. And later on, as a Christian, realizing it isn't your responsibility, it shouldn't be.
Right. Right. You are just a mortal man. Just.
Yeah, it's not me to determine the fates of others.
Right.
So I mean, that was the end of the conclusion of that. But still, it was quite a bit of exploration I had with that thing. But
And so this was all sort of taking place in your college years or towards the end of your college years?
yeah, it was during my college years. I spent a lot of time like with a lot of my friends there, and I really just wanted to understand all these different things. Because I'm just a naturally curious person who loves to learn new things.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the big things that I thought was interesting in terms of a college. I don't know if you're familiar with these game systems, but like Vampire and Changeling, and these are things called the Worlds of Darkness role-playing system.
Oh, I'm currently role-playing in a Worlds of Darkness game. I thought Saturday nights normally.
Which system are you playing?
We're doing. It's not Vampire the Masquerade. It's a different one.
Newer version of Vampire or something?
Yeah.
But the one thing that I thought was really interesting was just in terms of like, for instance, like Changeling. Changeling, the dreaming was what it was back in the day. But the whole idea is that you are a mystical creature living in a world of banality.
Yes.
And that you are magical, and the world around you is trying to stop your magic and creativity. I mean, that's an amazing mindset and storytelling system, which I was just fascinated with. Like, and that actually appeals to a lot of people who feel like they're different. The world is trying to suppress your differentness.
Right. I think that almost sort of sounds like it's part of the SJW narrative.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. Like, back, when I look at the patterns of what we're dealing with in terms of social justice and like other kin, when you listen to like someone like Internet Aristocrat, he loves to slam other kin.
Yes, yes, he does.
But just from my perspective, just listening to what is an otherkin and what's the appeal of it, and looking back into my role-playing days and the things that we love to role-play, for people who feel like they're different, the idea that you are some sort of magical creature in the world of banality or people who don't understand you, it is really appealing.
Sure.
Another one that I thought was really, really interesting was Mage the Ascension was another system we were playing with back in the day. With Mage, I don't know if you're familiar with this one, but Mage is basically, sorry about the lightsaber noise, my daughter's playing with it. I don't know if you can hear it from my microphone.
Better be light side, I'll tell you that.
It's green.
Good.
I don't know. She likes purple, so we'll see what happens.
Well, makes one do. It's okay.
Let's see. But yeah, like with Mage, the idea is that as a mage, you live in a paradigm of some sort. You have your own. You view the world differently from other people, and you view magic based on your paradigm of how the world works.
Yeah.
And the world has a dominant paradigm, which is something that you're fighting against, like a technocratic one that wants to remove your ability as subversive paradigms on it, and that's another like take on it. And the word that a lot of people would use, both in the mage system as well as people who I saw who believe that they practice magic, they'd use the word mundane on normal people who don't understand magic.
Mundane.
And when I heard the word muggle for Harry Potter, I'm like, oh, that is it's the idea. All the ideas coming together. I'm like, I see it, and I saw it in Harry Potter, which creeped me out. Which creeped me out a little bit at first. And my wife's like, that's nothing. And I'm like, well, yeah, I know, but I had my time back in college where there was a lot of people who were messing around with these things, and it gave me a little bit of the creeps because I still had that experience with the tarot cards. But either way, like, the language is all there. The idea that that you're something different, that I can see is really appealing to a lot of people who are struggling, especially with their own identities.
Yes.
So I mean, even though people sort of like laugh at other kin, I can really understand, and in a way, you can role play. It's very childlike and wondrous when you really think about it. The insidious part about it is when you really like lose track of reality, which is what some people are, some people are prone to do. But
I think that's my dilemma. That's what I criticize about the other kin stuff,
Mhm.
and a lot of the Tumblr degeneracy. It's like, but because it's not escapism. It's trying to supplant reality with another thing that feels more comfortable.
Yeah,
Um,
they kind of projected that gamers had this problem, right?
right. That's what they all think. But then you have two girls that pretend that they're cats licking each other, and they really think they're cats. Like it's absolutely bizarre.
I don't think it's nearly as bizarre as you really get down to anthropology, because totemism
Mhm.
is it is sort of a totemism that many people have practiced. And
Paganism. I care nothing for paganism.
I mean, dude, I like to pride myself on being Catholic because they're the most pagan of all the Christians.
See, I'm sort of pride myself as being the commissar. If I sniff SJWism or paganism, I just I'm surrounded by heresy and degeneracy everywhere.
No, I don't know. I think for me, I'm just like, you know what? I'm a fellow degenerate.
we're all degenerates.
Yeah, we're all. That's why I love, like, all this crazy stuff that happens on Twitter. I'm just like, you know what? I like you guys. If all these people like just posting all this random like stuff on Twitter, and I'm like, you know what? You're all right. We're all crazy. You guys are just honest about it.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's what I love about it. Like they're honest about the crazy things that they love and the crazy things they love to just shock other people. But when it comes down to it, like, we're just human beings.
Mm.
So like, when it comes down to like the I don't know, just from my person, just I guess from after many years of just simply dealing with being with my own issues and dealing with it, I guess I've just become a lot more patient with it, I guess.
Mhm.
Because I mean, from my perspective, I mean, I really got into a lot of these games, and you could say that that a lot of people were really impressed with my ability to role play different characters and roles and really project out a strong character.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it scared them because I was able to do it. Because when you really get into the role, and with method acting, basically, I was really great at
Mm.
method acting a lot of role playing situations. Especially with Cyberpunk and Mage and stuff like that. I really got into the characters really strongly, and people enjoyed it because it was, we all got into characters really well. But at the same time, it could get a little scary. I can only imagine what people thought of Heath Ledger, doing the Joker.
Right. Especially with himself, with killing himself. Then shortly after that.
Yeah, I mean, there is that element, especially when it comes to like heavy role playing, that you have to come back to yourself, and
Right.
that's hard sometimes. And that's something that I realize, like, when writers and creative people all have that. What's the word is re-entry. Walker Percy uses that when someone has to re-enter back into the normal world. Sometimes they need a little assistance, which is why a lot of writers drink.
Hmm.
I don't know if you ever had a chance to read Walker Percy. Have you?
I have not. No.
I highly recommend his work. It's called Lost in the Cosmos.
Hmm.
That's only one of his books, but Lost in the Cosmos is a parody self-help book.
Yeah.
The reason why it's a parody self-help book is because when you go through some of his things about what the world is like and some of the questions he asks, they're very provoking because you realize that your sense of self is very loose.
Mm.
How you determine who you are, your sense of self, and sort of like, are you the clothes you wear, and how much of your personality changes with the clothes you wear, the situations you're in. And he loves to bring that out. And so it really comes down to the fact that when you look at yourself, who are you?
Yeah.
And he does have subtle hints at the very end of, like, his Walker Percy himself was a Catholic, and unapologetically so. But he sort of hints throughout the book how you come to know yourself, your real self. But he does point out how easy it is to just lose that sense. And for someone like myself, like, you know, getting into all these different games and stuff like that, looking back at my past playing role-playing games and getting caught up a lot with a lot of this, with a lot of magic and people that I was in, and trying to understand these different faith systems, that it's so easy to lose your sense of self.
Right. Right.
And
I think that's very true.
Yeah, and that's really one of the major issues I had in college near the end, is that, you know, especially when you're dating, this is something that people don't really talk about, is that when you're dating, you tend to lose yourself in the relationship if you don't know who you are.
Yes.
And a lot of the modern dating stuff is always about, you know, finding yourself when you have that one special person who sees you.
Yeah.
Can you hear my daughter's iPad in the background?
It's fairly soft. I mean, it's not influencing anything at all, I don't think.
Okay. I just don't want it to be like overwhelmingly distracting. You know, she's listening to, like, you know, children's songs. So
No, I think it's okay.
okay. Well, where was I? I was on the
Talking about relationships and losing yourself in them, and
yeah. That's something I don't think people like really talk very much, and it's how easy it is to get lost in another person,
mhm.
or at least hoping the other person helps you define who you are. And if you don't know who you are, or you have a loose sense of who you are, it's very easy just to get lost in all sorts of things with relationships. I mean, that's something that I found really, one particular person I dated back when I was in college was a fascinating girl. She was one of the people who actually taught me how to do divinations.
Hmm.
I mean, in modern terms, I would probably describe her as an otherkin.
Hmm.
But and how she identified herself, and how, because she strongly identified with her identity. Rain, Rain, go away. You want to watch Rain, Rain, go away? Okay, hold on a second.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why she defined herself as otherkin is because she viewed herself as a magical person. She was very much into the magic.
Okay.
And so she viewed herself as someone who was stuck in a mundane world. And I had very much sympathy with this person, especially because, like, you know, she had gone through a huge amount of trauma. I'll help you find it. She actually, when she was younger, she had her first sexual experience was actually her boyfriend raping her. Okay, and what happened was that from then she really had very little sense of who she was. Would try to find herself again in all these different relationships. By the time I met her, I was 19 and she was 23. She had like almost 80 partners at that point, both men and women, trying to find herself through that.
Wow. Okay.
But the thing is with her is that, you know, I could see that a lot of it came from her trying to find her identity. And me, I was fascinated with her because of the passion she had in her life, and all the different things she just saw wildly different from other people. It's easy for me, a 19-year-old, to get caught up with an older woman in that sense.
Sure.
And a lot of my friends were very cautious about it. But so, like, when I got into the relationship, it was like, you know, I really wanted to learn and see the world in herself, and I really wanted to be the man who basically could hold all that hurt and pain and hold her and say, you know, it's okay, you don't have to hate yourself anymore.
Right.
There's a huge appeal to that with a lot of people, especially the damsel in distress type girls.
I was going to say, I can imagine some of the honey badgers would disagree, but that's an incredibly masculine sense of what you want to do there. I think that's why, at least in gaming, that's why we play the male protagonist hero who's, you know, big and strong and a knight and who wants to rescue the world. Yeah,
and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a very in a way healthy. We want to be a healthy heroic person, but in terms of like relationships and it's very dangerous.
Yeah.
I think people don't view relationships from the standpoint of you're forming a bond, a partnership to build something on top of, rather than somebody simply to save you.
Yeah.
And I think being a savior, and I think that's the danger of it all, is crossing that threshold from, you know, this is a relationship where we're going to build something, a future together, versus I'm going to be your savior.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people who have, you know, troubled pasts, and people who it does appeal to a lot of the white knight types, and I actually was very much like that. especially my attitude of like me against the world. I'm going to fight the dominant paradigm of Christians who want to hammer my friends who are either LGBT or my friends who are neo-pagan, non-Christian. I'm going to fight this dominant culture, and I'm going to tear it up from the inside because they're hurting my friends.
Yeah.
That was my attitude. And I would, for a lot of people who were atheists and are non-Christian, like who are hurt by this, can identify with. That's why I think there's a lot of strong identification between at least the left as well as social justice.
Mm-hmm.
Where a lot of atheists are leaving the social justice movement is when it starts coming to like irrationality.
Mm-hmm.
But just from my perspective, when you define the word atheist, it's simply someone who doesn't believe in God. It doesn't necessarily mean I am pro-rationalism.
Right. Well, I think I'll just interrupt you and interject my own definitions. I think part of the discourse of what we're seeing within oh God, I promise this was not going to be a Gamergate stream. One of the things we're seeing within Gamergate is.
Well, that's fine. We all the issues are related, and that's the thing I find incredibly fascinating about it. They are related, and I am touching upon a lot of my older personal issues and seeing a lot of the same trends. And heck, I very much sympathize with Aaron because my ex-girlfriend was very much like Zoe.
Wow. Yeah.
If I describe to you somebody who was hurt, somewhere in the past, has issues with controlling their sexuality and expressing it and very passionate, and somebody you just want to hold and say it's okay, you don't have to hate yourself. Right. I see Zoe as that.
Sure.
Like a lot of people hate her and stuff like that, but when it really comes down to it, like she is someone who's really hurting.
She's a really all the big leaders of anti-GG of aggro are just really broken people.
Yeah, I know, and it's a sad thing. I could say like this person's really broken, and I really wish we could help them, but there's so much damage that's being done by them, and there's only so much we can do.
Right.
But I see that completely. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, not at all. I was just gonna wrap it up and just say that for me the definition is it's not. I don't want to just lump atheism together with, well, it's sort of a general anti-religious sentiment, which I feel it has become. There was a day when there was a very clear divide between the skeptic rationalist and the atheist. The atheist was sort of the nihilistic, very angry, very passionate, I am against theism. In all its forms. It doesn't matter what religion you are. It doesn't matter. For some reason, they have a real passionate hatred of Christianity. But the skeptic is the person that just sort of says, if there's a God, I don't know. It doesn't really bother me either way. I don't really want to talk about it. I don't think it's my job to push one way or another.
For me, I was anti-theist.
Yeah.
I was anti-theist, anti-religion, especially anti-Christian, because I saw it hurting my friends.
Right, and I think that's probably why so many atheists are, if you ask them about religion, they'll tell you it's a mechanism of enslavement. It's a method of thought that's essentially harmful to humanity. But they have a definite dislike, far more than other religions, of Christianity, possibly because that's what they have the most experience with in the West.
I think that's part of it, but also I think the idea that a loving God would send you to hell is something that's very repugnant to a lot of people.
Right.
How can you on one hand say that? Just from the definitions I gave you from like my experience with evangelical Christians, that a loving God would send you to hell simply because you didn't say the magic words.
Yeah.
That's how I looked at it, and I said, you know what, this is something that's pretty damn disgusting. And you have to admit, like just from that perspective, that's how I came into it.
No, sure, and I can totally see that. I could already see the arguments of you think that if I eat this magic bread on Sunday, that I'm going to be accepted into heaven,
Yeah. If it was that easy,
Right.
Unfortunately, that's a misrepresentation for what Catholics believe, but I can see that. The arguments that I see are often, from the standpoint of general Christianity, they're usually on point. But when it comes to like this, what Catholics believe, that's one thing I found fascinating later on. But there was a turning point, and I'll have to get to there. But you can see that, at least from this background, at least I can establish that I was very much anti-religion, anti Christianity especially, and it wasn't just simply from like. And even then, if there was a God, I'd still, just like Hitchens said, like, I don't want a spiritual North Korean dictator,
Right.
And I can see, and I shared the set. I mean, this was like maybe 15 years before. No, it was like 10 years before Hitchens even hit the scene. This is back like early before 2000.
Mm-hmm.
I already had the same sentiment as Hitchens did in his later works.
Hmm.
So I never encountered Hitchens until I was already, becoming Catholic. But I can definitely identify with a lot of his arguments.
Yeah.
So for me, like, my turning point was basically at the end of college.
Mm-hmm.
I had dated. It was a different girl I was dating, but it had very similar mental issues in terms of, like, always being the damsel in distress, always needing help, always needing someone to make her feel like she's loved. It really wore down on me. Just in perspective, just how dating really affected me. When I was my third semester of college, I actually was at a 3.7 honor student.
Nice.
When I left, I barely passed a 2.0.
Wow.
There was a lot. I mean, these girls that I was dating really took a toll on me in terms of mental and how much time and effort I put into them. I put in
Really
my heart
spent the energy.
Yeah, I really put in my heart and soul to try to help them and in a way, like, be the white knight.
Yeah.
It took me a little bit to learn my lesson, because I'm a very stubborn, passionate person, if you can't tell.
Well, a loving individual.
But yeah, the turning point was actually during my senior year. Now, like, we can always say that everyone needs to practice safe sex, but even with the most perfect of birth control methods, they fail. And that was the point where my girlfriend at the time got pregnant.
Okay.
And at that point we had to figure out what we were going to do. And we did the responsible thing, which was we told our parents first. We didn't keep it a secret or anything like that.
Yeah.
We wanted to make sure that everyone was involved. My parents, being at least a nominally Catholic background, wanted to have the child adopted.
Okay.
Her parents, because they were worried about her future career, and since she was at that point starting college, didn't want her to have the baby because they didn't want her future to be ruined.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it came down to her decision. Someone in the background is making this a lot easier to say. My little angel here. But yeah, I distinctly remember she asked me one particular day if I was ready and wanted me to be honest, because I was leaning towards adoption too. And I said I really wasn't ready. And she decided to have the abortion anyway. And I was there up to the point where they wheeled her away to the operating room, and when she came back. After that really was where I started really thinking about, like, what is this really all about? All of it,
Yeah.
Our relationship didn't last beyond that very much. We still remained friends. Our relationship went really cold after that, and I got into a deep depression and started thinking, where's my life going? What am I doing with myself? As you can tell, like, I almost completely and totally crashed my academic career for these people, and for these, especially for my girlfriends. I was in a deep depression, almost failing out of school. And I didn't know what I really wanted. I really didn't know what it was all about. I said to myself, like, at this point in my life, I had broken so many mental barriers, learning all these different things, learning all these different belief systems, trying to understand all sorts of different kinds of people. And in my mind, this was pretty much the last taboo that I could think of that held me back from anything. I was like, what is stopping me from being 100% nihilistic?
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of good, many responsible, very upright atheists I know. They're good people.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't. I had no sense of borders. I had no sense of myself. I had no sense of where I was going. I was completely and totally, like, lost. And at that point, I'm like, why can't I do these things? Why can't I just be completely 100% nihilistic? I mean, I started a little experimentation with drugs, and I have all these friends of mine, or at least people are very much interested in me. Like, why can't I be completely 100% hedonistic and just simply crash everything, and do everything I want to do?
Yeah.
What's stopping me? And from the perspective of atheism, at least, mostly what atheism answers is, well, why not? When you get down to some more brass, people will say, well, atheism is about rationalism. I said, is it really? You're just simply saying there's no God. There's nothing there that says you need to be rational. There's nothing there that says you need to be humanistic. I mean, many good atheists are, and I don't ever want anyone saying, oh, you can't say that any atheist cannot be. I mean, whenever someone says like, atheists are not like that, I said, yeah, I know. I'm just a horrible person. And they say, when they say like, oh, if you need God to be a good person, then you're a horrible person inside. Damn right I am. I know who I am. I know what I'm capable of. I know the things that I would love, I would love to do if there was no such thing as a consequence.
Yeah.
And at that point in my life, I had already I'd suffered the worst consequence I could think of. What more, if this really was the death of my child, and there's nothing worse I could do. Or if it's just simply her choice, I could just simply, rub it out from my mind and say, oh, it's her choice. I'm like, okay, well, it's her choice. I have no responsibility. I could do whatever the hell I want again.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of, that's something that atheism has never provided an answer on. The only answer is simply why not, and it's great for the curious. But when it comes down to why can't I do certain things when I don't care?
Yeah.
Why should I care? Answer that question, and that's something that atheism couldn't. So I saw myself going down this road, and I said, before I do that. Before I decide to throw myself 100% down this thing, because that's the way I am, a very passionate person, I'm not going to do anything half-hearted. I'm going to throw myself down this road if it really is the answer. Yeah, no dada.
Beep, beep, beep.
Beep beep.
That's a beep, beep.
Okay, beep beep. Okay, you want to do the? Okay, hold on a second. Hold on a second. She wants the wheels on the bus go round and round.
Classic.
Here you go.
Beep, beep, beep.
Okay.
Beep, beep.
I love how she makes it a lot more easier.
Sure.
Okay, but yeah, I said to myself, okay, before I do this, I'm going to do one more look around to see if there's any other possible answer out there. That there might be a different way, because this is something that if I'm going to be 100% into this, I want to make sure there's nothing else out there. This, I'll be skeptical about my skepticism.
Okay.
So I entertained the possibility at that point. Actually, before I did that, there was this one thing I remember doing. I remember distinctly one day being at the very bottom of it and said, you know what the hell? I prayed. For the first time I remember really praying. And I said, I don't know if you're real or not, but if there's anything else out there in the world that could possibly fix all this stuff that I've screwed up, it's you. If you exist, I will follow. But you have to show yourself to me. That didn't happen immediately. Then nothing happened. Nothing magical happened that day. Yeah. Nothing. It was just simply, I remember distinctly saying that out loud. Because I was just, if you're there at the very bottom, there's nothing else you can do. And a lot of atheists will come after me saying, that's usually how they come after you. You're weak and you're vulnerable. And I said, you know what? I didn't care.
Yeah.
So if weak and vulnerable, if I didn't care about how my life lived anyway, it was more of like, okay, before I destroy everyone else's life around me, and because I'm having fun, because I don't give a damn about anyone else anymore, because I've spent my whole life doing that, basically going the opposite extreme. I'm going to take a look around one more time to see if there's any other possible answer to this. And with all my experiences, I went through all the different like religions that I had encountered and philosophies to see if there was a possible answer. But I went on this criteria.
Yeah.
1, assume it's true. That's something that a lot of people, when you approach a different religion, you assume it's false from the beginning or something like that. No, I want to assume that they were right first. 1, if it's given it's true, is it consistent? Does it have an internal consistency, or does it simply have an inconsistency here or there that it tries to excuse one way or another? Is it morally consistent? Does it make moral sense? It can't be vague.
Yeah.
That's the number 3. It has to be consistent. It couldn't be vague. It couldn't be ill-defined. So there's a lot of, there's some religions that have some vagueness to it. And so I started going through a lot of different religions I encountered. Like Buddhism, for instance, was one thing that I loved early on, especially as a kid when it came to Zen Buddhism. But the whole idea behind Buddhism is that the whole of the reality is just simply an illusion.
Yeah.
Well, if reality is an illusion, well, why not? None of this is real.
Yeah.
You are just a figment of my imagination, or at least you are a projection of the total world consciousness that is also part of me. So why can't I just simply go kind of nuts with this kind of thing?
Yeah.
That's something that I really, that's something I really just thought was kind of interesting about Buddhism is simply that there is no other. It's all just one. And the idea that there is another person I'm talking to is simply because of a fault of my own, that I can't see the totality of the whole, and that I am a part of. Well, if that's the case, then why can't I just simply be as nihilistic as I was before? Because there is no self, and there is no other, and there is no reality around me. It's just an illusion. I don't know. It was something I just thought that really from right off the bat, the idea that there was no objective reality out there is one of the reasons why I rejected Buddhism and a lot of the Eastern religions right off the bat. When it came down to something like Islam or something like that, right? One of the things I especially wanted to be fair to Islam was simply saying, okay, I'm going to judge Islam not by the extremists or the bad people, but by its heroes. Okay, show me an Islamic hero, and let's judge it by that person. Muhammad, right? To be fair to many of my Muslim friends out there, Muhammad is quite a problematic character.
Yeah.
To use the phrase problematic in the right way, right?
Well, he did some toxic things.
That's a hard thing I had about him. We can definitely go down that road if you want to, but there are questions that especially as a Muslim, it's very hard to answer, especially from Muhammad, other than the fact that he was God's chosen.
Yeah.
That also is the same pattern for Joseph Smith. Yeah, I don't know how much you're familiar with Mormonism, but it's the same principle.
Right.
Joseph Smith is this chosen special one, therefore there are special exceptions to the things that he could do.
Yeah. No, I've not to take away from your story, but from my story, I've actually done a lot of the same similar introspection when it comes to various Protestant denominations and Islam especially.
Yeah.
So I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Okay. Let me get her back to the show she wanted. There you go. Now but the thing I think, when it comes to Judaism, Judaism has a lot in common with Deism, in the sense that there's God and He did everything for you, and it simply disappeared. That is probably one of the hardest things, especially that I find with a lot of Jews. A lot of Jews I met, especially in this role playing group that I played a lot with, they tend to be Jewish by culture, but not by belief. And then not only that, but Judaism and Islam suffer from problems of who has the right authority, and Islam right after Muhammad dies is split in half already between the Shia and the Sunnis.
Right.
And and with Judaism itself, it has the Orthodox and the Hasidic and Reformed, and it's like they have different opinions on things. I think that the joke a Jewish friend of mine said, you have two Jews, you have three opinions. And I'm like, yeah, that does sound like the way, because the religion is very fascinating, but at the same time, there's no clear answer.
Yeah.
But I think for me, what ended up being just interest to me was just the idea of Jesus.
Mhm.
That if there was a God, the most clear way for him to show himself would be to be like us. If there was anything more clear, because if God dumps on us an instruction booklet, that seems kind of unpersonal.
Mm.
Like, here, read my book and read the fucking manual. It does seem quite a bit impersonal.
Yes.
So just the idea of Jesus was fascinating to me in that sense. I mean, sure, I could get mad at Christianity and the different things about heaven and hell, but the idea that God became a human being, and one of the most remarkable things he did was being nailed to a cross, one of the most horrible sufferings imaginable. And first thing they do when they put him upright on the cross is that he has to push himself up with his feet on the nails of his feet,
Right.
turn and twist and torque so his arms can come up to the side so he can take a breath.
Oh yeah,
Up.
The physical crucifixion. What many a surgeon have said is that it basically put, especially the one of Jesus specifically, it pushed the human body to its physical maximum allowance of pain.
Yeah. And then you're pushing your back against the cross, broken in half by all the blood and slashes.
And that's after being scourged. Yeah, it's insanity. Yeah.
And the first thing this man does is says, "Father, forgive them. They know not what they do."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, if there is a God, I hope he's like you. And not like these followers you have.
Yeah. Sure.
That was the impression I got at that point. I was like, you know what? If that's you. At that point, I was still pretty agnostic and sort of looking around. I was actually doing a lot of research in terms of okay, what does the Bible say? And I want to know more about this particular belief system. And I found all these different streams. And back then, this was like early 2000. There weren't even streams. There were real media player files. People don't remember the real player back then.
Yeah.
And because I ended up working in IT, which gave me a lot of time to be online early on, and so I'd find people doing Bible dissertations and sermons, and I'm like, okay, what are these different people saying about this? Because I really want to know. It was interesting hearing all these different opinions, but it really what really kind of got me down the Catholic track. My ex-girlfriend who had the abortion, she felt incredibly guilty over it about a year later, and wanted to find a way to redeem herself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she comes up to me and says she has a problem. She needs my help. I'm like, okay, what do you need? I mean, we're still friends. We are actually still friends to this day, and we still care very much about each other. But we didn't date after that. What? Yes, what is it?
Knock knock.
Knock knock.
Knock knock.
Knock knock. Who's there?
Banana.
She's copying her brothers. They're saying knock knock jokes all the time. Sorry.
No problem.
My ex comes up to me and says, I have a problem. Okay, what's your problem? Oh, she says, I want to be baptized. Well, I'm like, okay, well, no, what's the problem? So this is my first real encounter with Christianity in that sense, because most of it's just simply sitting behind a desk and listening to streams and just maybe listening to a couple people and stuff like that, and thinking about it and just, but not really encountering it, right?
Yeah.
Yes, Jane. Yes, Jane. Yes, Jane. Sorry.
Knock.
Knock knock. Who's there?
Banana.
Banana who? Okay.
Banana peel.
Yeah, you know that one. Knock knock. Who's there? Banana who? Knock knock. Who's there? Banana who?
See, when I was small, it was always knock knock. Who's there? Apple what? Apple core. That was all I did.
I know the end of that is orange, and I'm like, okay, orange who? Orange, you glad I didn't say banana anymore? So my two older sons would repeat this joke to her over and over again, and she's verbalized it really well.
Yeah.
Okay. She asked me, I said, okay, why can't you get baptized? Well, my grandmother said I can get baptized because I can be baptized as an adult, but my mother says no. Well, her grandmother's Baptist. But my mother says no because I was baptized as a child, and her mother was a Methodist.
Okay.
And then her father's pastor, who was Presbyterian, said, well, whatever makes you feel better.
Oh my goodness.
More.
Okay. Again. Okay, here, you can have it. You can have this. Okay. This is probably the most active my daughter's been on these streams, so I apologize. Okay. So there we have the first time in my life to see full blown the problem that we have with Protestantism. You have three very sincere believing, Bible beliefs, and they have a completely and totally different takes on what baptism is.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of Protestants will say, "Oh yeah, we'll sort it out in the end, and this is really something that we'll figure out, or we'll all believe in the same basic core tenets." But in my mind, I have somebody who I love very much, someone who is still dear to me even then, suffering because there's no clear answer.
It makes it personal. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes it personal. Like, are you going to say to me like, "Oh, this is okay," as a pastor because Jesus will sort it out in the end after the rapture, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, no, I have someone here who is suffering, who wants to be helped, and you can't give me a clear answer on why you guys can't baptize her or why you should, or yes, no, and maybe. Give me a clear answer what the real answer is.
Yeah.
And at the same time, she's asking me for help. So I'm like, well, who am I? I'm not one of these pastors who spent years of his life in theology to understand this, and they can't agree between the three of these denominations.
Yeah.
Like, who am I? I mean, I just came out of college with a computer science degree, barely.
Yeah.
And I had no idea how in the world to address this problem. This is beyond my expertise.
Yeah.
But then, there's my white knight coming up again. Like, I'm going to solve this problem for you. Whether or not it means just breaking down the whole system, because that's how much I care about people. And maybe that might be kind of the reason why I'm also in Gamergate. These are good people, and you're not going to do these to these good people, and
Right.
that's why I'm here. So that's my personality. So anyway, so there she is, and I'm like, well, you know what? I'm going to try to help you solve this problem. So here I go. I start researching. Okay, why are these three different branches of Christianity different? Where do their differences come from? And you go back a little bit. Okay, they came from this denomination. They came from this founder. They came from this person who had this disagreement. And then you eventually come all the way back down, and you find out they all come down to one point. That's the Catholic Church. Okay, what does the Catholic Church say about this particular problem? When somebody commits a really bad sin and they want to be cleaned of their sins, what do? They're not baptized. They go to confession. And I'm like, then I read, okay, what's the history of this? How far back does it go? And I keep going. Okay, it goes back to, from the time of when Luther breaks off, it goes further back and further back and further back. And I say, okay, this is a train of historical thought that has contained this one idea that if somebody makes a mistake, they can still come back to Jesus even after their baptism. And not only that, but it also has a recurring patience to it, that people will fall back to the same things again and again, and that God is not about the 180 degree conversion and finally you're free of all your sins, but no, it's a slow and painful process of rehabilitation.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is what it is. It's like confession is basically, you go back, and even though it's the same things over and over and over again, it's okay. God's there to be with you step by step. He's suffering with you. He's forgiving you every step of the way. I'm like, this is so different than what I was told about, what Christianity was.
Right.
Usually it's like, accept Lord Jesus as your Lord and Savior, and that's it. No, this is different. This looks like this is a system where people who are broken come and say, you know what? I want to be fixed. I want to be whole. I'm not a perfect person. Help me.
Yeah.
And instead of just saying, you're healed, you're go ahead, go and go and you're fine. It's a system where like you have some people with you, suffering with you, being with you, who are also sick with you in their own struggles.
Yeah.
And that I found was incredibly different. Like that's why. Okay, so when I started seeing that pattern, I'm like, okay, well, let me go back to my original objections. Why did I find Christianity so abhorrent? I mean, does this root Christianity? Is what I found. Does this root Christianity? How does it resolve these questions about sin and death and stuff like that, and people going to hell who are far away and stuff?
Yeah.
So then I started researching. I'm like, okay, well, when it comes down to like, does everyone go to hell by default? The answer by many like evangelical influenced Christians is that mankind is depraved and therefore by default is going to hell.
Yeah. We're all sinners in the hands of an angry God.
Right. Whereas with Catholicism, and at least in early Christianity, you see that there's a patience. It's greater, that you have that mankind is broken, but they're not lost. They're not totally depraved. There's still some fundamental goodness in them. Mm-hmm. And that God is patient and takes people as they are and brings them and wants them to come into his heart. So it's not like, okay, you criteria, do you make it to heaven or do you make it to hell? No, it's a lot more. It's more of a spectrum. It's more of like, it isn't just a clear-cut yes or no answer, and everyone else who hasn't answered correctly, who said the magic words like "confess Jesus, my Lord and Savior," are going to heaven. It's more of like God is actively seeking to come and to help people come closer to Him.
Well, and in terms of the do I go to heaven or do I go to hell thing, I've always thought it was really interesting because, as a child, I always thought it's almost like okay, you die and you go to a courtroom. Right.
Yeah.
And say, oh no, you were bad for most of it. You're going to hell. And then the demons, from Ghost come and suck you down. But but as I got older, I realized, frankly, that's as a child I saw things childlike, and as I got older, I started to realize that with the essence of sin and who you are as a human being, it's not it sort of happens of, do you go to heaven or do you go to hell? I think it's more a matter of, well, how did you live? Did you bring heaven to earth or did you bring hell to earth? And it's not some grand, I'm going to stand before Peter who's going to tell me, nope, you're denied. It's, I think your soul would very naturally transition to what you've been doing. I don't think you would know, frankly, the difference between going to hell and doing the terrible things that you've done on Earth, if that makes sense. I'm getting all metaphysically on you.
Well, I don't think that's actually wrong. I mean, even just in our experience, I mean, here we go again with Gamergate. I mean, like, we have people who are horribly mentally ill, who are horribly sick, on the anti-Gamergate side especially, and you look at them and you can see how they perpetuate their lies, and they have to fight to keep their lies up. They have to, it's a certain neurosis that they have to make sure that that their lie is never discovered. And just seeing them run around and try to project out, and they project their own hate, they project their own insecurities, they project their own guilt complexes, and you look at it and go, wow, these people are like, if you could see hell in them.
Yeah, they're
living hell, and they Arthur Chu hates himself, that he wants to simply kill himself and all men. This is what he tweeted. I don't know, people who are not familiar with the stream, he tweeted out that I feel so bad for how women are hurt by men that I just want to take the entirety of men and just jump in the ocean and drown them all, basically himself and everyone else. And I'm like, wow, that amount of self-hate.
Right. You are one broken man.
Yeah. And that, in a way, is an image of hell. I mean, someone who, I can see in him the want and the desire to be a hero, the want and the desire to be a good person, and the self-hate that he has for himself.
Yeah.
That I would say is hell. And I mean, I have to say that there are some Christians who suffer from this, and I think that people don't realize this is something called scrupulosity.
Mm.
I know I suffer from it a little bit. Actually, I suffer from a lot, but there are people who have that issue.
Yeah.
And it's something that I think that a lot of people that goes unaddressed by a lot of, especially a lot of other denominations who aren't familiar with scrupulosity. I think Catholics are one of the few that actually talk about it.
Yeah.
But the just like just going back to like the original objections I had when it came down to Christianity.
Right.
Was it isn't about that. I found that there's a tradition, and it's historical, that it isn't everyone's going to hell. That God Himself, you can see it, that God Himself is about addressing each individual person from what they know. Even from the first couple centuries, you have someone like I think Saint Cecilia, who had a pagan brother who died,
Mm.
Deformed, and she had visions of her brother broken and in a dark place and still maimed, and she spent her time praying for him because she would have visions of him suffering in this place of darkness.
Mm.
In a way, it's purgatory, but then she would have a vision many years later. She'd have a vision of him again, whole, no longer deformed, in a place of happiness.
Yeah.
Even though her brother had died a pagan, through her intercession was able to pray for someone else's soul.
Right.
Who wasn't even a Christian. And
I know that's a big thing between I just actually got into this debate a couple weeks ago with a Protestant, that the entire concept of intercession, that your prayer can do something for someone that's already dead, that's a huge no for a lot of people.
That I don't get at all, because I mean the idea that we're connected, the idea that even though someone who's passed can still be a part of our lives. And my father passed 3 years ago, and you can still, in a way, they're still part of your life. That's the thing I think of with a lot of non-Catholic Christians, is that there's a break that's almost unnatural.
Right.
I mean, like you have beautiful things like the Dios de los Muertos from Mexico, where people like celebrate the Day of the Dead. They spend time remembering their ancestors, and this is something that this is an instinct that you find in the East and in all these different religions, that your ancestors are still there.
Yeah, I'd say it's part of natural law. They're imbued in you, whether you want it or not. It's
that's why I kind of enjoy when they say Catholics are very pagan. I'm like, amen, because a lot of pagan instincts are true instincts.
Mm.
And it's just a matter of like what I find amazing in Catholicism is just how it brings it to life, how it brings it to light. And okay, so my other objections I had were things like if everyone's not going to hell, I think really what solidified it for me was reading one day, just going through the Vatican II documents. One of them was Nostra Aetate. I hope I'm pronouncing it right, but it means in our time. The Vatican II document was basically about how the different religions of the world work together and how God works through them and with them. And I thought that was really amazing, just to see that even though clearly you get to Jesus Christ most clearly in the Catholic Church, that God still works with everyone and tries to bring them together and tries to bring everyone into a closer, loving relationship with Him. And how it starts talking about the goodness in each part of the religion. I mean, there are problems, as I said, like when it comes down to some of the logic that I was going through, like why certain religions have certain issues, which need to be addressed. But at the same time, God still works with them and through them, and it doesn't about, okay, you're wrong and therefore you're wrong, this whole denomination's going to hell, and they are wrong and that denomination's going. No, God takes you as you are and takes that part of you and judges you by it. I think probably the best image of this was from Narnia. Lewis himself, I think, had a great instinct. I don't know if you read the Last Battle.
I didn't care for the Chronicles of Narnia. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, I'll give the image, all right?
Go.
In the Chronicles of Narnia, there's a young boy who believes pretty much a system of belief that's very similar to Islam, right? So he dies, or what happens is that he crosses the threshold and meets Aslan, basically the who Jesus is in Narnia, right?
Okay.
And he realized the young boy was virtuous, and he wanted to know the truth. So he stepped across the threshold and meets Aslan, who's Jesus.
Right.
And he realizes, he says to himself he's dead, because he realizes that he has completely and totally believed the wrong thing and worshiped the wrong God, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Aslan says to him, no, you have sought truth your whole life. Whatever you did good, I will attribute to me, that you've done for me.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever you've done evil, I will attribute to the God that you worshipped.
Oh, okay. I like that.
And it shows, like, this is somebody who's, it looks like the Islamic faith, and that this person who sought truth his whole life and sees finally the real answer. And Jesus, in the character of Aslan, judges him this way. And this is C.S. Lewis in the early part of the 20th century. He shows me this is exactly how Jesus is like. And for me, I'm like, is this just a fanciful thing for an author, or can I find this in church history?
Yeah.
And as I did the research, I found it in church history that this is something that the Catholics have always believed, that they're in the Vatican II documents, which is in the mid-60s, but then it goes back centuries of tradition of where God is having mercy on these people, even though they don't believe necessarily the right things. They're still doing what's right. They're acting to the light that's in their heart. Mm-hmm. And so, like, you have someone like Pope Benedict, who's people always say is a stodgy, dogmatic person. He says things like, the atheist who seeks truth with his heart and is out there and trying to hammer out and suffers to try to find the truth and fighting for justice is closer to God than the lukewarm pew warmer in the church.
Absolutely. I completely agree. Yeah.
And that's the thing that's what I found fascinating about Catholicism. I'm like, this, just because you're Catholic doesn't mean you're going to heaven.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In as much as so what's the point of being Catholic? Well, the point about being Catholic is that you know who Jesus is, and that Jesus himself works in your life then you want him to be in your life to help you become a better person every step of the way, even if it means that you fall down every day, even if it means you go to confession every week, like I do. Like, God.
I haven't been to confession in quite a few months. I'm a bad Catholic, but
no, you're not. Okay. And my confessor rolls his eyes every time I come to the door and is like, again? I'm like, yeah, I'm again. I'm like, oh, yeah, it's fine. Yep. And I'm like,
you're just perpetually ready to die in a state of grace.
Well, I think that part of my early part of my conversion experience too was that when I started becoming more Catholic and really understanding this, it was around 9/11 too. Mm-hmm. And I was commuting in and out of DC every day, and I would always think to myself, if there ever was a terrorist attack on the metro in DC, I wanted to be ready. Yeah. So that was part of my spiritual formation. That was in the background as I was trying to learn this. But I think one of the most remarkable things for me was, as I'm learning all this, as I'm starting to understand what Catholicism's about. It's not about here's the book and you have to follow the rules. No, it's about God being there with you every step of the way. He came down here in person, and not only that, but he's transmitting the faith to you in person through persons. Mm. Here's Peter, and he transmits it to Linus, and Linus transmits it to Cletus, to Clement, all the way down to different popes. And somewhere down the line, one of them is your bishop, who, and the priests who work under him. And not only that, but the people. It's just all about people. Yeah. It's not about books. You get the book and people will get it wrong, but you get people and you get to see how messy they are, but at the same time, how the whole thing works together. I mean, that's the whole thing I found really amazing about it, was broken people somehow making the world better. Yeah. And so there I was, like, discovering all this as I'm trying to help out my ex-girlfriend. And I'm just amazed at this system. Mm-hmm. That if this is the way that God works, can I find an internal inconsistency? Can I find there's a place in the moral law of the Catholic Church that says, okay, it changed from one to another? And I find, amazingly enough, like, you have popes who have mistresses, and popes who are adulterers, and popes who have multiple lives at the same time. Yeah. and yet they never changed the laws of the church to say it's okay for popes to do these things.
Mm.
I mean, you have you have different religions who say, since I'm in charge of the religion, I can have many wives.
Yeah.
But you have popes who are in charge of the religion who don't change it. They don't change it to suit their women. Like, you have all the power to change the church laws to make this okay for yourself.
Mm.
You don't. And you have popes who are basically run by the mafia, like in the mid 11th and 12th centuries, and they don't do that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what the heck is wrong with this? Like, if I had that kind of power, if I was running a religion, I'd want to do that, because that's the kind of horrible person I know I am. Why can't I have my harem anime if I was in charge of my own, in charge of my own religion, right?
I'm curious. Why do you think they didn't?
That's what I couldn't explain. I couldn't explain that in human terms.
Mm.
I mean, like, if I were, like, just as from a skeptical point of view, you have you are in charge of a religion, and you are the sole authority in terms of the moral law because you happen to be the head of the church. Yet you will not allow the papacy to have them have multiple wives, even though you yourself, as the Pope, have multiple wives and concubines and mistresses.
Yeah.
I couldn't explain that.
Mm.
The only explanation I would find is like that the Catholic Church somehow is protected from that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I went through books like a great book called Pope Fiction by Patrick Madrid. Pope Fiction is a whole list of objections to the papacy, of things that they did that were wrong, and trying to find that point in time where, like, okay, did the Pope change the moral law in one way or another to suit his fancy? Mm. And that's the first thing I would do as an atheist. I'd find an inconsistency in the moral law. Is there an inconsistency? I couldn't find one.
Yeah.
In 2 millennia of broken people running the church, there is no inconsistency. Hmm. And that's what I found fascinating. So one of the things I also want to point out was, like, during this time, this was also the early part of the church scandals, where people were beginning to find out that there were bad priests who were molesting kids and bad bishops who were not doing their job. Mm-hmm. And then, like, going back in Catholic Church history and finding worse things. There were worse things that popes and bishops did, and not only that, but what I found was I did the same thing that I would do for Islam, judge it by its heroes, right? Yeah. Church heroes included people like Catherine of Siena. Catherine of Siena was a nobody. She was the 9th daughter of a wool dyer, I believe, was a wool dyer. Not even a noble, and yet she's considered a saint because, among the things of her being a very pious and religious woman that people sought advice from, she told the Pope, "Man up and do your job."
Right, right.
I mean, you have someone that the church praises as a hero, someone who told the highest power of authority in the church to do his damn job.
Right.
I mean, like, for a lot of other religions, they don't like to do that. They don't like to make heroes of people who question the authority of those in power. But yet here's the Catholic Church, who supposedly is the most powerful, longest-lasting institution, and we make heroes out of people who question people in authority.
We have all that Templar gold.
Yeah. I mean, we have Joan of Arc, who's shown how broken the system is in terms of, like, tribunals and inquisitions and stuff like that. Yeah. I mean, the Vatican would later retry her with a lot of people who were alive still then, and re-examine the case. But
that's the thing. Her trial was a sham. It was a political sham. And
right. And we have corrupt bishops and corrupt priests who are trying to get her to recant her situation.
Right.
And so, like, the Vatican would thankfully later, like, do another trial, at least with a lot of the other witnesses who were there, and show that she really was a good and practicing Catholic. Right.
But it was because the people that sat on her jury were 3 bishops from England and 1 representative from the Vatican. So they would simply overturn him every time. Right. So and then when it finally exploded, that was when the Vatican stepped up and said, "No, this was a sham. We are condemning the actions of these bishops," and
Yeah, and so they eventually did a retrial, years later, with the same people, thankfully, from both sides to have to witness to it. But, like, it's a witness to the fact that the system is broken, and this person who ends up being the saint is the person who suffered it.
Yes.
And you have Saint Francis, who in the middle of the 11th and 10th centuries, there were priests who had rich dioceses and rich parishes, and yet he's the one who goes around shaming with all these people because he's a poor beggar who wants to be with the people and showing them that Jesus, the way of poverty, and eventually he's the one who reforms the church to make them into so that the papacy makes priesthood celibate, so they won't have a priestly caste of people with riches and stuff like that. They want people with a monk-like attitude to become the priest, and like so you have like reforms like that, and I'm like, this is a church that continually always criticizes the people in power. People in power aren't always right. Yeah. And the church recognizes that and makes heroes out of people who do that. So it's like, this is different, you know? And so like during the church scandals, we have all these really horrible people that are there, and there I am, and I'm looking at the news like they always do. They love to show things like the Catholic Church is like this, or the Catholic Church should be like that.
I was actually working for the tribunal during that time, and oh my God, they it was never ending. And then for us, we were getting phone calls. The phone was going off the hook again and again and again from people saying, "Oh, I was abused, and I'm bringing a lawsuit against you."
Yeah.
I mean, it was constant, and they were all bullshit. Everybody, I don't know where the perception comes from that we just somehow the church is made of money. Like we just have all this money, and I don't know when every diocese, at least in my state, is actually in debt. Like I don't know. I don't understand. The only thing that I want to say about the church scandal is that I heard a lot of people say that it rocked their faith to the core, that they can't be Catholic because they placed all this trust in these priests, right? And my retort to that is, then you were misled, because you don't place your faith in these priests. Your faith belongs to God. You can trust the people, you can trust the institution, but you don't place your faith in that.
Right. Actually, in fact, that was another thing that really appealed to me, was that, you know, I could, as a lay Catholic, if I had a disagreement with the priest, I could show him the line and passage in the Catechism to show him he was wrong. If I could actually go through the rules and go through the book, and basically, actually it was funny. I was in confession once, and I was confessing my sins, and the priest tells me that's not a sin. Father, you know, I'm the one confessing. Father, that is a sin. No, it isn't. I'm like, yes, it is a sin. Look it up in the Catechism. This line in this paragraph, this is a sin. I am confessing it. I want you to forgive. I want to be absolved of this.
Yeah.
I'm there correcting the priest in the confessional.
Sure.
That's the kind of power I have as a lay Catholic. That if I was in a Protestant circle, I basically tell the pastor, like, you're wrong. He says, no, I'm right. Well, here's a passage in the Bible, and then it's the end of the story. And then you disagree, start a new church.
Well, see, and that was a very interesting thing that I spoke to a woman about one of the last sessions that we did on just tweeting about, and you know, she said that, you know, she was a Catholic who then converted to a Protestant denomination, and one of the things is the pastor became this heavy SJW racist. Oof. And he was telling all his congregation that you need to get rid of your racism and all these things, when really he is the racist. And one of the things that I was very curious, I wanted to ask her was, I mean, so where's the system of check? Who places him in check? I mean, because she told me that the church fell apart, right? Yeah. And I said, yeah, well, that's unfortunate, but at least he's not preaching anymore. But then she said, oh, no, he went somewhere else and is preaching. And I'm like, well, I don't understand, because in Catholicism you can't do that. If you do something bad, then the bishop steps, who's ahead of the pastor, who's of the preacher or the priest, and just says, well, you're done. You know, you're out of there. You're going to shape up now. So that is one system of checking SJWs coming into the church that we have. But I don't, you know. What's the answer? What's the solution for the Protestant? I don't know.
Well, yeah, the only issue is if the bishop themselves an SJW.
Right, and then it gets right.
Yeah, because at that point, like, you know, you have to be patient and eventually work in the system or work with the bishop until he transitions out.
Oh, then you go to the Cardinals. You know, go to the Cardinals. There's always somebody higher.
Yeah, that's something that I know for decades has been a battle in the church,
Right.
and but that's I think, and that's the reason why we have the church candles, is because there's a huge number of these, completely and totally theologically wrong people, and
Right.
who have taught really horrible priests and let priests who are good out, and priests who are candidates for priesthood, get them out of the seminaries, and really bad ones let them in,
Right.
and been sabotaging the church for about 40, 50 years. And now that that it's come around that these people are pastors and in positions of power, they're the ones doing a lot of the abuse.
Right.
At the same time, you're right, there's a lot of these false allegations going on that, in the same light of a lot of these false rape accusations coming out in the media now that people are really hammering
Oh
on.
yeah. That's the current hot topic. Every woman is raped on campus, and someone, yeah.
And now they're finding out this is not really true for a lot of these cases, and to be very careful.
Mhm.
But I will say we have to be careful, that many of the people who are being legitimately hurt are not
Right.
unheard.
Of course. No, I obviously I completely agree. I'm just saying, for me, it was very frustrating to be working in the church at that time, and to just to see the blatant lies coming in, all for shekels. Like, oh
Yeah.
my God, just
Well,
insanity.
you might as well pile on the ambulance chasers, right?
That's true. Yeah, that's all it is. All it is. One person is hurt, and then 10 people want to claim grievances for them. Yeah.
But for me, like what got me was, like, here are people like Sean Hannity who come in. Well, I was once an altar boy, and this is the way the church should go. And I'm like, you're an idiot, Sean. I mean, even then, I was like, I leaned conservative, really conservative at that point. But I'm looking at Sean going, so you have an opinion because you were once an altar boy and you once wanted to go to seminary, or you were in seminary. You never finished, but yet you have an opinion.
Right. Right. Right.
That's not the way the church works.
I don't
And
care for Sean. I'm not the biggest fan.
but either way, I was like, this is not the way the church is. This is not the way the church has to go. And so, for myself, at least at that point in time, it was still intellectual. A lot of this was just simply in my head.
Yeah.
And around this time was when I started volunteering with the church, and started making it part of my heart, and really going in there, and really going to confession all the time, and really working with the community. And I joined something called the Legion of Mary.
Mhm.
Legion of Mary is a lay group, and they work in tandem with the pastor, with whatever the pastor's needs are. Usually, it has to do with teaching, or it has to do with visiting a lot of the sick people or shut-ins that are in their particular parish. That was something I was very much into at that particular point in time. There was a whole bunch of people my age, about in their early 20s,
Yeah.
going out and volunteering to help teach and help take care of a lot of people who are sick. And I think that was the most formative part of my faith, was that, because it showed me that, sure, you can have the intellectual faith,
Mhm.
but when it comes to living it out every day, there's a lot of things that you have to take the humanity of.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, we can say that, this is the dogmatic thing that we have to do. We have to be this kind of good person, but then, when you're out there really trying to live it,
Mhm.
you realize that you are not perfect, and you can't hold people to the same perfection, to that level. And that it really comes down to us being together and having mercy in one another.
Mhm.
That's something that I found incredible, at least in terms of, like, just my experience, is that um, it wasn't about having that 100% turnaround. I mean, there's a huge tension with a lot of Christians that I read about. I mean, that you listen to some of their music and listen to some of uh, evangelical music, especially, where there's a certain neurosis about being found out that you're not as perfect as you make yourself out to be as a good Christian.
Yeah.
Um, at least for myself, I found that it's just simply admitting that you're not a good Christian, and
Sure.
that you're a practicing Christian. You're a practicing Catholic. You're not perfect. You're practicing.
Yeah.
And that I think was one of the bigger things that I learned throughout the years, especially becoming a parent. Was like, you don't have the answers.
Mhm.
The church provides you. One of the things that the church does is that it provides you here. This is the direction to go.
Yeah.
We're not all going to be perfect, but at least we have a place to go.
Mhm.
A lot of modernism, I think, there are two forces to love, and this is the way I would explain it. There is the force of love that is, you're good as you are.
Mhm.
and then there's a force of love to, I want you to grow to your fullest potential.
Yeah.
And I think that the two together is what makes sense. There's a lot in our current culture of you're as good as you are. You don't have to change. You don't have to be any better. You don't have to accomplish anything. You get a trophy for participating.
Yeah. Up to
But then
10th place.
yeah, but then you have the opposite extreme, which is you're never good enough. You're never going to be up to your potential. You're never going to be perfect. And there's that neuroticism of like, you're never ever going to be in that place where you can say I'm done.
Right.
So it's both. Any good parent wants your kid to both love themselves as they are, but also you want them to continually grow and reach their potential.
Yeah.
So that was the tension between the two that I started learning, especially as a parent, with in terms of faith. But I think when it came down to atheism, a lot of this was finding that my objections to, is God really out there? It was more of like, okay, I want to assume that this person is innocent until proven guilty.
Mm-hmm.
That this system of belief is innocent until proven guilty. Otherwise, I will leave it, and once found guilty, I will leave it.
Yeah.
My problem with Catholicism, I have not been yet able to find a reason to leave it. Like a logical inconsistency. You can say, there are bad people in it. So yeah, that isn't really. I mean, that's the first premise of Christianity. There are good and bad people, and people are broken. So what? There's a lot of objections to it. So for me, I kind of joke. I said, if I had a preference, if I had a preference in religion, I'd prefer a religion that was easier. I'd prefer a religion that that allowed me to do certain other things that Catholicism says, you should avoid this, you shouldn't do this. One thing that my wife and I struggle a lot every so often is we both don't use birth control. We're able to space our children out because there's a lot of great information out there about natural family planning, about how to naturally space your family out without using artificial birth control. It isn't about having as many children as you want to, just like Pope Francis said. But that is one thing that we find difficult at times. It isn't necessarily always easy. I mean, there's a joy to it because I get to understand her natural rhythms. I can tell when my wife is going through her natural rhythms, and I can sense it now that we've been many years of practicing this, and our children are spaced out the way we want them to be. So it works really well. It just takes a little bit more discipline. And honestly, sex is one of those places that I really would wish I didn't have discipline about.
Of course.
But yeah, that's a natural thing. So
right.
It's the thing. Like I think that if I preferred other religions, yeah, there are a lot of ones that are easier. But this is the one that I found that it answers my objections to truth, to consistency, to if there's a God out there, that there's a God that loves you. It's not about there to get you the first chance he gets to sit. He's not some magical old man who made the universe with a magic wand and is particularly interested in what you do in your bedroom, which is how a lot of Christians act when it comes to God.
That's quite true.
And no, he's not. He's more than that. And there's a lot. I mean, the objections to God is just some creature out there like Zeus, and you read Thomas Aquinas saying, no, God is not a thing in the universe. He's not a being in the universe. He is being itself. He is not a true thing in the universe. He is truth itself. He is not a good thing in the universe. He's goodness itself. He's beauty itself. And that is what I found incredible about it, is that it's not just a simple thought. I mean, the objections of the flying spaghetti monster, which is what everyone says, that God could have been anything like that, like a flying spaghetti monster.
I think it's so clever.
Well, I have to admit, it's a legitimate gripe if you believe that God is some sort of magical creature out there. But then,
I think it's a fundamental misunderstanding. Yeah,
I think so, and that's the thing. When I found, I still love listening to the objections of many atheists, and I find their objections always hinge on the same things, and on the same objections with many other Protestants have, which is simply like, if you believe the Bible, why does the Bible say this and why does the Bible say that? I think that was the one thing that I found really incredible was, and it's probably going to be a whole other stream in itself, the objections to the Bible, the certain passages of sexism in the Bible.
Yeah.
One of the things I found amazing, like, okay, so women are going to be subject to your husbands, kind of thing, and I'm like, okay, well, what does the church say about this, and what's the tradition behind it? And I found a tradition which I was like, wow, There are 7 women in early Christianity who are celebrated in the Mass all the time. These 7 women are martyrs in the first couple centuries. Lucy, Agatha, Anastasia, Agnes, Cecilia, Felicity, and Perpetua. 7 women who spoke up against their husbands, who spoke up against their fathers, who spoke up against their governors, and are held up as models of Christianity for the early Christians.
Right.
These are women who defied power. And those 7 women have influenced the imaginations of many other Christian women, many other Catholic women who've come afterwards, who saw their example. These women were not quiet. These women were not people who didn't speak up against men. They did.
Right.
And it's like, who are they? And what is the context of them in the Catholic Church versus what the Bible says? You put the two together, you have a different context than simply, women have always been silent. No, women have been pretty darn up there. And
right.
What I found amazing though is like, okay, I didn't know that a saint is a virgin. Our first thought is, oh yeah, she didn't have sex. But if you take it in the context of the history of the time, the fact that a woman is a virgin and not married, and yet she has a position of power and merit in the society that they're in, a quote-unquote chauvinist, patriarchal society such as the Romans, this woman's a virgin and she's celebrated as a virgin. That means that the church has always viewed women as a person who doesn't have to be married to be a person.
Yes.
And yet we're called the patriarchy.
These are all really good arguments, and I enjoy talking about these things.
I could go on forever. I could.
Well, see, and that's why if that's sort of the end of what brought you back or to the Catholic Church, I think we should probably start trying to wrap it up, because I know how people view these, watch these videos, and I know that generally getting their attention span for longer than an hour just ain't going to happen.
I know.
And there's a lot of good, I think, that you've said here. So,
but at least I hope the people who have been listening and who will get to this point, I hope I fairly represent at least a lot of their objections and how I eventually became a Catholic. And for those who are still here, I appreciate you listening to my story.
I think there's one person. It says we have 3 viewers. I think that's you, me, and one person. So, and there has been a couple comments. Do you have time? Do you want to?
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, it's up to them. I hope they're still around when they ask the question.
One of them's a question from Mr. Fibble. It's what is an SJW? I've heard a lot of definitions, but I'd like to hear yours. I think he was talking about how we were mentioning that, like with the Protestant minister who's talking, all he's doing is pushing the race thing and all that stuff.
Just from my definition, there are legitimate social issues that have to do with oppression and minority rights that we have to discuss.
Okay.
And that I believe that what people define as quote unquote social justice, I really think that's a really terrible word anyway, but because there's so many nuances. But social justice is a legitimate gripe about minority rights in whatever country they're in, and we need to be properly address them. Yeah. A social justice warrior, however, is someone who takes an identity from fighting out these issues as if they were a personal crusade. And I think that really is the difference, that these people see these social issues as their activism and in a way take on a religious fervor to it that is very unhealthy.
Yeah.
That I would define as a social justice warrior.
Yeah, and I think for me, I would pretty much use that same definition, but I would only add to it in the degree of the unhealthiness, because I see the social justice warrior as essentially a nihilist who is trying to find purpose within their own life, and the purpose they find are the causes of social justice, of racism, sexism, bigotry, of all that.
And it's a really, in a way, it's a really appealing place to find yourself, because there are legitimate injustices in the world, but trying to find your identity through that, as I said, it's hard to define yourself. Finding yourself in this justice cause is really dangerous, because that's really the danger of it all.
Yeah.
they find themselves in this fight, and you really finding yourself needs to be outside. It needs to be outside of a conflict.
Yeah.
Was there any other questions?
No other questions. I suppose I could read. Okay, we got a viewer, Cal1699. I think, man, thanks for sticking around. I think you've been in here for almost the 2 hours that we've been in here. He's just saying that his objections are. I think he means his objections to Christianity are different than the ones described. He says his atheism was not based on value judgments or anything to do with good or bad things in the Bible or done by the church. It's just logic.
I think there is logic and skepticism. I think that
Mr. Fibble's here too. All right.
I mean, the logic part, I would say that there are good arguments for both that God does exist and does not exist on both sides. Just from my perspective, from where I was coming from, there is no answer in atheism to answer my nihilism.
Yeah,
that was the issue. So what I did was I resulted into asking the question of, okay, I'm going to give this belief system innocent until proven guilty, and then see where it leads me first. And that's where I took my skeptic glasses off and said, okay, let me take a look at this and look at it from a logical perspective. That if this is true, what does this mean?
Yeah.
So it's a little different perspective from just being skeptical from on the onside of everything. So because at that point in time, really, there was nothing holding me back from being completely and totally nihilistic, which I respect many good atheists for, that they are not that kind of crazy. But I know that I'm not that good a person without my belief.
And perhaps if I ever feel up to it, I do not. I do not have the courage that you have to talk about your faith. There was some definite trial and tribulation in my own life where I did become an atheist for at least a little while. Hopefully, a bit more of a skeptic than what I consider an atheist. But one of my dearest friends is a skeptic, and neither of us are saying that we don't like atheists. I think, or
oh no, I love them dearly. In fact, I get along with atheists better than I do a lot of evangelicals.
Well, right, and I think the reason that he has remained one of my best friends for so long is very specifically because of his quest for truth, of his desire to apply the scientific method, to be rational, to try and break down, to find the fundamentals in the natural world. Because that's how I often view myself, as using natural law and theology to understand the world and how we operate within it. That's why I enjoy skepticism. It's the atheism thing but that's me.
I think you mean by atheism, you mean more the anti-religion type stuff.
Right. It's the anti. It's the fact that you are a Christian is offensive. That to me is, well,
Well, I hope I was able to give.
No reason to go into that, but
yeah, but I hope I was able to give you a perspective on why someone would feel that way.
Oh, no, absolutely. This has been a really awesome time for me. So thank you for coming out to do this. I do want to start doing more things. Yes, I want to do more things with theology. Let's see. Did anybody else? Oh, Mr. Fibble said that this is simultaneously the cutest stream and the deepest stream. So. He was referring to your daughter always.
Well, she is very deep, I'll tell you that. but actually, and honestly, you don't. I mean, one of the wonders about being a parent, I'd say, is you get to see yourself in a deeper light, because you have to really be patient with yourself and others, because you want the best for your kid, and you're never going to be good enough parent for them. So I think that's the dynamic. You have to be kind to yourself too as a parent.
Yeah.
And I think that I think the dynamic of me being a parent, especially in terms of what we're dealing with in terms of our activism, Raging Papists, is that patience. And I think that's something we need to extend to a lot of other people in this current battle we're fighting.
It's good for you to say that, because patience is something that I have run out of very, very easily when trying to maneuver with social justice, or trying to maneuver with all these things. But I think it's because for me, sort of being the cradle Catholic who has never left, sort of, it's just I never had a break. So my tolerance of these issues. That's why people make the Warhammer 40K references. They make all those jokes about the heresy degeneracy knows no bounds.
Yeah.
The reason those jokes tend to actually really I really enjoy them is because I feel like in some ways I get that.
Yeah.
Because I think some of us just have felt like we've never had a break from this, and it's just it's ongoing. So I'm very reluctant to negotiate. I'm very reluctant to give breathing space, and I know I need to. So it's good to say that.
I think that in terms of the prodigal son, we forget about the elder brother, don't we?
We do indeed. He had a story to tell as well.
When we all need that love from our Father.
Mm.
Well, thank you for having me, and I really appreciate the time we've had.
Yes. Thank you for showing up, and to Mr. Fibble and Cal 1699 and anyone else who joined us. Thank you so much for coming out. And if you ever want to do another stream about faith or a specific theological entity or doctrine, I'd love to chat about it. So.
Well, I'd love to be here, and I just hope I haven't bored anyone to death for 2 hours.
All right. Well then, thanks everybody. It was fun.
Well, thank you, and good night.
Good night.